Paul McCartney reveals his list of favorite drummers. Sir Paul McCartney, while with the Beatles, composed a number of the band's most iconic and commercially successful songs. And in addition to John Lennon, Paul McCartney's collaboration with John Lennon is the most influential songwriting duo in the annals of rock and roll. During a television interview at the Liverpool Institute for the Performing Arts with Jarvis Cocker, Macca reminisced about the early days of his friendship with Lennon, when there weren't as many opportunities to record musical ideas as there are today. Because of this, the dynamic team had to make sure that every song they created was instantly catchy and unforgettable. In a similar vein, McCartney did not have a typical musical education for a performer of his caliber. So in order to learn the songs, he had to make do with what was at hand, listening to albums and playing along. In this video, we will be discussing Paul McCartney's thoughts on his list of the best drummers of all time. When you're done watching, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. So because of his unschooled approach to music, Paul McCartney was able to play several instruments. McCartney played electric guitar with the early Beatles lineup, the Silver Beatles. Naturally, he'd make the transition to bass. So McCartney was the most dominant member of the band, even to the point of being controlling, despite his reputation as the lovely Beatle. The ability to play multiple instruments comes with the additional task of learning to let other band members play their parts in their own unique ways. This is why Ringo Starr would occasionally leave the White Album sessions in the middle of recording. Macca had an occasional habit of criticizing Ringo's playing, and at one point, Ringo had enough. As a result, McCartney had to fill in on drums for a couple of tracks. On the track Back in the USSR, he played guitar in addition to drums. Another one was called Dear Prudence. In spite of Ringo Starr's late friendly return to the recording sessions, McCartney ended up recording drums for Martha My Dear himself. And McCartney had a very specific idea in mind for how he wanted the song to sound, and Starr didn't want to upset Ringo by trying to explain it to him, so he let him improvise. It's hardly shocking to learn that tensions were increasing by the time the Beatles were recording the White Album. The album depicted a fractured band, with each member contributing to the writing and performance of their own compositions. Recently, on the Howard Stern show, Paul McCartney was asked, "Who are your favorite drummers?" And a gesture of diplomatic assurance and genuine brotherly love, McCartney named his top three. And this award goes to Ringo Starr. Keith Moon came in at number 3 behind John Bonham. So Paul McCartney lists his favorite 3 drummers. So who are your favorite 3 drummers? Let us know in the comment section below. So not technically the finest by a long shot, but for feel and passion and economy, they're always there. Particularly Ringo, said Sir Paul McCartney on the show. And Ringo Starr was the only Beatle who had previously toured with another band, so when he joined the group, he seemed like the missing piece of the puzzle, as described in Mark Lewisohn's The Complete Beatles recording sessions. The Fab Four questioned Ringo Starr on the topic of drum solos. We assume he'd say, "Sure, I'll have a 5-hour one in the middle of your set," but he surprised us. He then proceeded to declare, "I detest them." The two of them both said, "This is fantastic. Our hearts are overflowing with affection for you." The other 2 drummers on McCartney's wish list, ironically, were also firecrackers who regularly broke out into lengthy solos. In contrast to Ringo Starr, Keith Moon and John Bonham used several fills in their playing. And it's ironic that Led Zeppelin was the band Keith Moon appeared with on stage in the moments before his death. It was a concert in Los Angeles in 1977. Moon, visibly drunk at the time, joined Zeppelin on stage during one of Bonzo's iconic solos. The 2 virtuoso drummers had more than just one commonality. After the breakup of the Yardbirds, Jimmy Page wanted to form a new band and had every intention of making it into a supergroup. Page had also approached Keith Moon to see if he would join the band, who was also friends with Jeff Beck. Fortunately, fate decided to replace Keith Moon with someone else who was just as explosive. The same fate befell John Bonham in 1980. The coroner's report revealed that Bonzo's bloodstream contained the equivalent of 40 shots of vodka, just like Keith Moon's. Ringo Starr isn't as in the pocket as John Lennon or Paul McCartney, but providing the crucial drum beats that a song needs to require to a different kind of concentration. Some musicians just want to jam and let loose, while others are more committed to the material at hand. Whether Paul McCartney felt obligated to list Ringo Starr as a favorite due to their history together or not is uncertain. But one thing is crystal clear: Paul McCartney, as a member of the Beatles and Wings, has varied preferences and never settles for second best. Sir Paul McCartney's domineering nature can at times be disruptive to the professional relationships he maintains with others. It has been hypothesized that despite his obvious talent as a multi-instrumentalist, the ever-technical McCartney has trouble communicating to others the specific nature of the music that he appreciates. This leads to many arguments with his bandmates, particularly Ringo. Despite this, Macca displayed the true spirit of a brother when he talked about his top 3 selections for the greatest drummer on the Howard Stern show. And Bonham and Moon have been recognized for a very long time to be 2 of the most technically skilled and productive drummers in the history of rock music because of their ability to kill drum solos, loud beats, quick tempos, and other similar musical elements. But to play drums in the Beatles, on the other hand, is a lot more difficult than you might think it would be, because the band was the originator of many musical innovations. It is imperative that you keep an eye out for what's to come, even if you don't anticipate it. There is no way for us to determine if Paul McCartney chose Ringo because he was his closest buddy or not. But anyone who is familiar with Macca's incredible ascent through the music industry is aware that he will never be satisfied with anything other than being the best there is at what he does. And Paul McCartney addresses this in his biography many years from now about his favorite drummers Ringo Starr, Keith Moon, and John Bonham. But to speak more technically, they weren't the most trustworthy. But when it came to successfully express the intended tone or invoking the sensations that were intended, Ringo was the only one who never failed to deliver. But it should also come as no surprise that Paul McCartney regards Keith Moon as one of his favorite performers, given the affinity and respect that the two share for one another. Paul McCartney had a lot of respect for the group's drummer. So when the Beatles were in the midst of a serious crisis in 1966, the drummer suggested to Paul that he replace Ringo with McCartney as the drummer in training. Ringo was furious about this suggestion, and after recovering from an initial moment of astonishment, the bassist admitted that he should have approached the person who had initially brought up the matter. Nevertheless, despite this occurrence, the two went on to become very good friends with one another. So here we can wrap up our video. We hope you enjoyed it. If yes, then hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. What are your favorite drummers of all time? Tell us in the comments below. See you in the next video.